Sean Mercer. On August 22, 2007, the Fir Tree Pub car park in the Croxteth area of Liverpool became the scene of a terrible incident. 11-year-old Rhys Jones had just finished football practice and was crossing the parking area on his way home. It was a route he had walked countless times before, in a neighborhood where he had grown up. That evening, someone opened fire in the area, and Rhys was struck in the neck. He collapsed, and despite desperate efforts by his mother Melanie, who reached him within minutes, Rhys passed away from his injuries. The investigation that followed would reveal a world of gang rivalry and territorial disputes that had been simmering in Liverpool. Sean Mercer, who was 16 years old, was a member of a group known as the Croxteth Crew. He had already accumulated a record that included possession of a prohibited weapon. On the day in question, Mercer had been alerted by an associate, Melvin Coy, that members of a rival group were present in what he considered his territory. Mercer armed himself with a Smith & Wesson revolver and cycled to the location. From approximately 70 yards away, he fired at his intended targets, members of the rival group. He missed them entirely. Instead, one of his shots struck Rhys, who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. The medical examination would confirm that the bullet had hit Rhys in the neck, causing fatal injuries. What made the incident even more disturbing was that Mercer continued firing additional shots even after Rhys had fallen. The scene was chaotic, with bystanders and vehicles present. The area was a public space that had been turned into a danger zone by Mercer's actions. The motive behind the attack stemmed from ongoing feuds between gangs in Liverpool over drug territory in the L11 postcode area. The timing was particularly significant as it coincided with the anniversary of another gang-related incident, which had heightened tensions between the groups. CCTV footage proved crucial to the investigation. Cameras captured Mercer's movements as he cycled to the location and fired the weapon. Following the incident, his associates attempted to eliminate evidence. They doused Mercer in petrol to remove gunshot residue and burned clothing. Despite these efforts, investigators were able to build a case through witness testimony, physical evidence, and the video footage. Mercer was apprehended, but he attempted to intimidate witnesses during the investigation. 6 additional individuals were eventually charged with assisting him in various ways, including evidence destruction. The case went to trial at Liverpool Crown Court in late 2008. The proceedings lasted 11 weeks, and Mercer, then 18 years old, chose not to give evidence or admit responsibility. This decision meant that witnesses had to relive the traumatic events in court without any acknowledgement from Mercer. After 3.5 days of deliberation, the jury unanimously convicted Mercer of taking Rhys's life. The 6 co-defendants were convicted of assisting an offender, with some facing additional weapons charges. On December 16, 2008, Mr. Justice Irwin sentenced Mercer to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 22 years. The judge cited multiple aggravating factors, including firearm use, planning, endangerment of the public, and gang involvement. During sentencing, Judge Irwin delivered pointed remarks to those involved, stating they were not soldiers with discipline or honor, but rather selfish individuals who posed a danger to others. He called Mercer's actions cowardly, particularly for firing in an area where innocent people were present. The judge also praised Rhys's parents for their dignity throughout the proceedings, calling it a reproach to those in the dock. 11 accomplices, including Mercer's mother Jeanette, who was later convicted of perjury and assisting another son, received combined sentences totaling more than 60 years. Many have since been released or recalled to custody for various reasons. Mercer remains incarcerated and has shown no reported remorse for his actions. Could a simple argument at a party turn equally deadly? Dylan Cranfield. In Harrogate, North Yorkshire, on February 19, 2023, 17-year-old Dylan Cranfield was hosting a gathering at his home on Claro Road. 4 friends had come over, and the group had been drinking vodka together. Among them was 17-year-old Seb Mitchell. The evening began as a typical teenage party, but it would end in tragedy. At some point during the gathering, a mirror in the home was broken. An argument developed over who was responsible for the damage, with Cranfield blaming Seb and demanding that he pay for the replacement. What might have remained a minor dispute escalated rapidly. Other friends present attempted to intervene and calm the situation in the living room. Instead of allowing the argument to dissipate, Cranfield went to the kitchen and selected the largest knife available. He returned to confront Seb, pointing the weapon at him. In a moment that would change multiple lives forever, Cranfield stabbed Seb once in the chest. The single wound proved catastrophic, striking Seb's heart with lethal force. The injury caused severe internal hemorrhaging, and despite being transported to hospital, Seb passed away 2 days later from his injuries. Following the incident, Cranfield contacted emergency services but provided false information. He claimed that Seb had fallen onto the knife, attempting to characterize what occurred as an accident. North Yorkshire police arrested Cranfield and began investigating the circumstances. As they interviewed witnesses who had been present at the party, the truth about what had transpired became clear. Forensic examination confirmed that Seb's death resulted from the single stab wound to his heart. The force used and the location of the injury indicated a deliberate action rather than an accident. During the investigation, the sequence of events was reconstructed through witness statements and physical evidence from the scene. Cranfield was charged, and the case proceeded to trial at Leeds Crown Court. The trial lasted 9 days and concluded on August 25, 2023. During the proceedings, Cranfield admitted to manslaughter but denied the more serious charge. He claimed he had not intended to use the knife in the way that he did. However, under cross-examination, he acknowledged panicking after the incident. The jury deliberated and returned a verdict of guilty on the more serious charge by a 10-2 majority. They rejected the lesser charge, finding that Cranfield's actions met the legal definition of the more serious offense. Judge Guy Curl KC, who presided over the case, determined that while there had been no premeditation, the incident stemmed from intoxicated rage over the broken mirror, with intent to cause serious harm. On December 4, 2023, Cranfield was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 11 years before becoming eligible for parole. Following any eventual release, he would remain on license for the rest of his life, subject to recall if he violated conditions. The impact on Seb's family was profound. During sentencing proceedings, multiple family members provided statements. Seb's mother, Sonia, spoke of how friends should not take each other's lives and the permanent sentence of pain their family would endure. His brother, Tom, described the pain that flooded his heart at the thought of Seb's absence. Another brother, Sam, noted that Cranfield appeared to shed tears only for the consequences he faced, not for Seb himself. Judge Curl acknowledged that the pain and anguish experienced by Seb's family could not be measured. According to family statements, Cranfield showed no genuine remorse for taking Seb's life. The case illustrated how quickly a situation involving teenage drinking and a minor dispute could escalate to irreversible tragedy when a weapon became involved. What happens when someone believes they'll receive money for committing an unthinkable act? Caden McIntosh. In Alaska in 2019, a group of teenagers became involved in a scheme that would result in tragedy. 16-year-old Caden Brian McIntosh was part of this group, which included 19-year-old Denali Bremer. The group also included 19-year-old Cynthia Hoffman, who had developmental differences and considered Bremer her best friend. What Hoffman did not know was that her supposed friend was involved in something terrible. On June 2, 2019, McIntosh and Bremer drove Hoffman to Thunderbird Falls in Chugiak. The location was remote and away from witnesses. Once there, McIntosh shot Hoffman in the head, causing fatal injuries. Her body was then bound with duct tape and photographs were taken. Hoffman's remains were left in the Eklutna River, where they were discovered 2 days later. The investigation would uncover a disturbing motive. McIntosh believed he would receive $750,000 as part of a $9 million offer from a man in Indiana named Darren Schillmiller. Schillmiller had been communicating with Bremer online, but he was not who he claimed to be. He had been catfishing Bremer, creating a false identity and persona. The supposed financial reward was entirely fictitious. Schillmiller had manipulated Bremer into believing she would receive money in exchange for taking someone's life and documenting it. Bremer, in turn, had recruited McIntosh to carry out the actual attack. The scheme was premeditated rather than impulsive, with planning occurring before that June day. Hoffman had trusted Bremer completely, making the betrayal particularly cruel. Following the discovery of Hoffman's body, Alaska law enforcement began investigating. Evidence, including the photographs taken at the scene, digital communications, and witness statements, led investigators to the individuals involved. The scope of the conspiracy became clear as they traced the connections between McIntosh, Bremer, Schillmiller, and others who had played various roles. Multiple individuals were eventually charged in connection with the case. McIntosh initially faced very serious charges, but in May 2024, he accepted a plea agreement and pleaded guilty to second-degree charges. He was the final defendant in the case to resolve his charges through plea negotiations. On November 15, 2025, McIntosh appeared for sentencing. Judge Andrew Peterson presided over the hearing and considered all factors before imposing sentence. The judge sentenced McIntosh to 70 years in prison, a substantial term that reflected the severity of what had occurred. During sentencing, Judge Peterson made clear findings about McIntosh's conduct and attitude. The judge stated that McIntosh had shown no genuine remorse and had never fully acknowledged what he had done. Judge Peterson emphasized that this had not been an impulsive action, but rather a planned and premeditated act. The sentence reflected these findings. The other primary individuals involved received similarly severe sentences. Schillmiller, who had orchestrated the catfishing scheme and manipulated others into participating, received 99 years. Bremer, who had recruited McIntosh and betrayed her friend Hoffman, also received 99 years. Another participant, Caleb Leyland, awaited his own sentencing as of late 2025. Sometimes the setting would be a school hallway. Mohammed Umar Khan. In Sheffield, England, 15-year-old Mohammed Umar Khan attended All Saints Catholic High School as a Year 10 student. Khan had a background that included difficult experiences. He had faced mistreatment, neglect, and harassment. And he had a kidney condition that required him to take on a caring role. He had also shown an interest in weapons, with photographs and internet searches for knives found on his phone dating back to 2024. Khan had initially been friends with another student named Harvey Wilgoose. However, on January 29, 2025, a physical altercation at school split friendship loyalties and created tension between them. Over the following weekend, arguments continued between the teenagers through Snapchat messages. Khan perceived threats from Harvey and others, though the actual danger level was disputed. On February 3, 2025, Khan brought a 13-centimeter serrated hunting knife to school. He later claimed he brought it for protection due to the perceived threats. During a science class that morning, Khan provoked Harvey. Later, during the lunch period in the school cafeteria courtyard, a confrontation occurred between them. Khan stabbed Harvey twice in the chest, using severe force that penetrated a rib. The injuries caused significant blood loss, and despite immediate medical attention, Harvey passed away from his wounds. The attack had occurred in front of other students in what should have been a safe school environment. School staff acted quickly. A teacher named Mr. Morgan Davis disarmed Khan, taking the knife away. During the immediate aftermath, Khan made a statement to staff, saying he was not right in his head. This confession, combined with CCTV footage from the school that captured the incident, provided clear evidence of what had occurred. Khan was arrested and charged. During the investigation, it became clear that while Khan claimed self-defense, he had actually been the aggressor in the confrontation. The perceived threats he cited did not justify bringing a weapon to school or using it in the manner he did. The motive appeared to center on hurt feelings and anger over what Khan saw as betrayal in friendship during a dispute he himself characterized as trivial. The case went to trial at Sheffield Crown Court during the summer of 2025. The proceedings lasted 6 weeks. Khan had pleaded guilty to lesser charges of manslaughter and weapon possession, but he contested the more serious charge. His defense team argued for a loss of control defense, suggesting Khan had not been in control of his actions at the crucial moment. The jury rejected this defense and convicted Khan of the more serious offense. The verdict reflected their finding that Khan bore full responsibility for his actions despite his difficult background and the tensions that had existed between the teenagers. On October 22, 2025, Khan was sentenced to detention at His Majesty's pleasure, which is equivalent to a life sentence. The minimum term was set at 16 years, though when adjusted for time already served on remand, this became 15 years and 106 days before he would be eligible for parole consideration. Khan would remain under supervision for life, even if eventually released. Judge Ellenbogen, who presided over the sentencing, noted the senseless nature of the acts and how they had affected multiple lives. Harvey's family provided victim impact statements. His sister Sophie spoke about how the defendant had not just ended Harvey's life, but had ended their lives as well, in a different sense. Their mother Caroline expressed feeling that a weight had been lifted with the conviction, but noted that Khan did not appear sorry for what he had done. Another case would involve someone acting on another's instructions. Fode Camara. In Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, 15-year-old Fode Kevin Camara lived what appeared to be a typical teenage life. There were no detailed prior issues documented in public records about his background or behavior. However, in November 2022, he would become involved in an incident that would dramatically alter multiple lives. On November 8, 2022, Camara and his brother John entered an apartment belonging to Zaria McKeever. They had been armed and sent to this location by McKeever's ex-partner, Eric Haynes. The stated purpose was to frighten McKeever's new boyfriend. The plan was orchestrated by Haynes as an act of revenge against McKeever for moving on to a new relationship. When the brothers forced their way through the door, McKeever's new boyfriend fled the scene. This left McKeever alone to confront the intruders. As the situation unfolded, McKeever approached with a knife, possibly attempting to defend herself or her home. Kamara responded by shooting her 9 times, causing fatal injuries. In the chaos, Kamara also wounded his own brother John. The shooting occurred inside McKeever's residence, and emergency responders arrived to find a tragic scene. The investigation immediately focused on identifying who had been present and what had motivated such an attack. As detectives interviewed witnesses and examined evidence, the connection to Eric Haynes became apparent. The motive was revenge, orchestrated by Haynes because McKeever had ended their relationship and become involved with someone new. Haynes had manipulated the Kamara brothers, both teenagers, into carrying out his plan. The case highlighted how adults can exploit young people to commit acts on their behalf, insulating themselves from direct involvement while still achieving their desired outcome. Kamara was arrested following the incident. As the case developed, prosecutors built charges against multiple individuals, including both Kamara brothers and Eric Haynes. The adults who had orchestrated the home invasion faced serious charges for their roles in planning and facilitating what occurred. In March 2024, Kamara accepted a plea agreement. He pleaded guilty to second-degree intentional charges, a serious offense but less severe than what he might have faced at trial. As part of the agreement, Kamara testified against the adult defendants, providing information about how the incident had been planned and who had given the orders. His testimony would be used in prosecuting Haynes and others involved. On May 8, 2024, Kamara appeared for sentencing. The court imposed a sentence of 130 months, which equals approximately 11 years in prison. This represented a downward departure from standard sentencing guidelines. The judge took into account Kamara's youth at the time of the incident and the fact that he had been coerced or manipulated by adults into participating in the home invasion. The sentencing drew mixed reactions from McKeever's family. Her aunt Virginia Taylor expressed frustration, noting that Kamara had plenty of time to think about his actions before carrying them out. She felt the family should not all be victimized by lenient treatment. Cousin Georgia Davis emphasized the need for accountability at some point. However, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, whose office prosecuted the case, stated that one of the young defendants had taken responsibility, acknowledging the guilty plea and cooperation. Julian Hutton Reed. In Reno, Nevada, 16-year-old Julian Hutton Reed had become involved in the local gang scene. Gang activity in Reno, while perhaps less publicized than in larger cities, nevertheless created dangerous situations where territorial disputes and rivalries could turn deadly. In August 2023, such a situation would unfold near the University of Nevada, Reno campus. An apartment complex near the university became the site of a confrontation between rival groups. What began as a verbal altercation escalated rapidly. During the confrontation, Hutton Reed was provided with a firearm. Rather than attempting to de-escalate or leave the situation, he made a fateful decision. Hutton Reed chased 17-year-old Santiago Rodriguez down Virginia Street, one of Reno's main thoroughfares. As Rodriguez ran, Hutton Reed fired at him multiple times. Even after Rodriguez fell to the ground, Hutton Reed continued shooting. Rodriguez was struck 7 times and died from his injuries. Another victim, 15-year-old Manuel Garcia, was also taken during this incident, though details about the circumstances of his involvement were less extensively reported. The shooting occurred in a relatively public area near a university campus, raising concerns about safety in what should have been a secure neighborhood. The brazen nature of the attack, with Hutton Reed pursuing Rodriguez down a major street and continuing to fire even after he had fallen, shocked the community. Law enforcement responded quickly to reports of gunfire. Hutton Reed was arrested on August 4, 2023, shortly after the incident. The investigation included gathering witness statements, examining physical evidence from the scene, and analyzing any video footage that might have captured the events. The connection to gang rivalry provided context for what had motivated the confrontation. Rather than proceeding to trial, Hutton Reed accepted a plea agreement with prosecutors. He pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including taking a life with a deadly weapon, possession of a concealed firearm, and destroying evidence. The evidence destruction charge suggested that Hutton Reed or associates had attempted to eliminate physical evidence linking him to the incident, possibly disposing of the weapon or other materials. On October 17, 2025, Hutton Reed appeared for sentencing. The court imposed a life sentence with eligibility for parole after serving 20 years. Additionally, consecutive sentences of 8 to 20 years were added for the weapons charge. Other charges carried concurrent sentences that would be served at the same time as the primary life sentence. The structure of the sentence meant that Hutton Reed would serve a minimum of several decades before becoming eligible for parole consideration. The consecutive nature of the weapons enhancement ensured that even the minimum time served would be substantial. Nevada's sentencing structure for gang-related incidents involving firearms is designed to provide lengthy incarceration periods. If you've made it this far and enjoy deep dives into the most shocking criminal cases, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to press the bell icon. Some cases would raise questions about what happens when panic takes over. Joshua Phillips. In Jacksonville, Florida, in November 1998, 14-year-old Joshua Phillips lived with his family in a neighborhood where everyone knew each other. Phillips had grown up in a household where his father maintained strict rules, and those who knew the family described the father's approach as harsh. Phillips himself was generally seen as quiet and friendly, without any history of concerning behavior that might have predicted what would occur. On November 3, 1998, Phillips was playing baseball outside with a neighbor. The neighbor was an 8-year-old girl named Maddie Clifton who lived nearby. According to Phillips's later account, he accidentally struck Maddie in the eye with the baseball. This is where his version of events becomes difficult to verify. As what happened next occurred without witnesses, Phillips claimed that when Maddie began crying from the injury, he panicked about his father's reaction to the situation. Rather than seeking help or telling an adult, Phillips said he dragged Maddie inside his home. What followed was a series of actions that would prove fatal. Phillips struck Maddie with a baseball bat, inflicting severe injuries. When she continued to make sounds, he stabbed her multiple times and cut her throat. He then concealed her body underneath his bed, hiding it in the waterbed frame. For an entire week, Phillips continued his normal routine. He attended school, interacted with neighbors, and even participated in searches for Maddie when the community organized efforts to find the missing girl. The deception required to maintain this facade while knowing what had occurred was chilling to investigators, who later examined the case. On November 10th, Phillips's mother, Melissa, discovered Maddie's body while cleaning. The decomposition had created an odor that led her to investigate the waterbed. When she made the horrific discovery, she immediately contacted authorities. Phillips was at school when police arrived to arrest him. Once in custody, he confessed to what had occurred, though his explanation centered on the initial accident and his fear of his father's anger. The forensic evidence painted a disturbing picture. Maddie had been beaten with the bat, stabbed 7 times, and her throat had been cut. The medical examination made clear that the level of harm went far beyond what might occur in a moment of panic. The methodical concealment and the week-long deception raised questions about Phillips's claim that fear had driven his actions. Prosecutors argued that while Phillips might have initially panicked, His subsequent actions demonstrated awareness and planning. The decision to try Phillips as an adult reflected the severity of what had occurred. The trial in 1999 lasted only 2 days, and Phillips was convicted of first-degree charges. Notably, his defense team called no witnesses, a strategy that left many questions unanswered. Phillips was originally sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. However, changes in juvenile sentencing law prompted a resentencing in 2017. At that hearing, Phillips was given life imprisonment, but with a mandatory review after 25 years. This review would consider whether continued incarceration remained appropriate, given his conduct in prison and other factors. In October 2025, a court began reviewing Phillips's life sentence. The proceedings were scheduled to continue in December. Phillips has maintained that he put himself in a fantasy world as a defense mechanism during the week he concealed what had occurred. Maddie's sister Jessie provided a statement, noting that Maddie never got a second chance and expressing the view that her sentence was final and her perpetrators should be as well. Another case would involve a school setting that turned deadly. Barry Lukaitis. In Moses Lake, Washington, 14-year-old Barry Lukaitis struggled with depression and anger issues that those around him had noticed. He lacked the tools and skills to process these emotions in healthy ways, and this deficiency would have tragic consequences. During the mid-1990s, concerns about teenagers and access to weapons were already part of public discourse, but the mechanisms to identify and intervene with at-risk youth remained inadequate. On February 2, 1996, Lukaitis entered an algebra classroom at Frontier Middle School, dressed in Western-style clothing and armed with a rifle and handguns. What occurred next shocked the community and the nation. Lukaitis opened fire in the classroom, causing fatal injuries to 3 individuals: 49-year-old teacher Leona Kyers and 2 students, Manuel Vela and Arnold Fritz, both 14. He also wounded 13-year-old Natalie Hintz. The attack was stopped by a teacher named John Lane, who managed to disarm Lukaitis and prevent further harm. Lane's intervention undoubtedly saved lives, as Lukaitis had come prepared with substantial ammunition. The immediate capture of Lukaitis meant investigators could quickly begin trying to understand what had motivated such actions. During the investigation and subsequent trial, information emerged about influences that may have shaped Lukaitis' thinking. He had watched films like Natural Born Killers and music videos such as Pearl Jam's Jeremy that depicted troubled youth acting out violently. Experts debated the extent to which media exposure contributed to his actions versus whether underlying mental health issues were the primary factor. Lukaitis was tried as an adult in 1997. His defense team presented an insanity defense, arguing that his mental state at the time should affect his culpability. The jury rejected this defense and convicted him on charges related to the taking of 3 lives: assault and kidnapping. The kidnapping charge related to his holding students hostage during the standoff before Lane disarmed him. Originally, Lukaitis received a sentence that would have kept him imprisoned for life without the possibility of release. However, Supreme Court rulings regarding juvenile sentencing prompted a resentencing hearing. In 2017, Lukaitis was resentenced to 189 years in prison, a term that still effectively means life imprisonment, but acknowledges the legal requirements for juvenile offenders. One case would become known for raising profound questions about interrogation practices. Brendan Dassey. In rural Wisconsin in 2005, 16-year-old Brendan Dassey lived near his uncle, Stephen Avery. Dassey had intellectual impairments, including a low IQ and language processing difficulties, which placed him in special education programs. His parents had divorced when he was young, and he had a quiet demeanor that those who knew him described as shy and compliant. These characteristics would become central to one of the most controversial cases in recent American legal history. In October 2005, a woman named Teresa Halbach disappeared after visiting the Avery property to photograph a vehicle. Her remains were eventually discovered on the property, and Stephen Avery was arrested and charged. Initially, Dassey was not considered a suspect. But in March 2006, after a series of police interviews, he confessed to participating in terrible acts against Halbach. According to his confession, he had helped his uncle in various ways, including harming and disposing of Halbach's body. The confession was detailed and disturbing. However, it was what happened during those interrogations that would spark intense debate. Investigators used the reed technique, a method involving lengthy questioning, false assurances, and psychological pressure. Dassey was questioned without a parent or attorney present during crucial interviews. Despite his age and cognitive limitations, he was told that investigators already knew what had happened and that being honest would help him. He was promised that he could return to school if he simply told the truth. After providing the confession, Dassey almost immediately began trying to recant, claiming that police had suggested details to him and that he had simply agreed to whatever they proposed. He stated that he had made up the story based on prompts from investigators, believing that telling them what they wanted to hear would allow him to leave. His mother and defense attorneys argued that the confession was entirely coerced and unreliable. What made Dassey's case particularly controversial was the forensic evidence, or rather, the lack thereof. Despite the detailed confession about his involvement, no physical evidence linked Dassey to the scene. There was no DNA, no trace evidence, nothing that corroborated his presence during the incidents he described. The entire case against him rested on the confession alone. Dassey's trial took place in 2007, and he was convicted based primarily on his confession. The jury found him responsible for participating in harming and disposing of Halbach. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with parole eligibility in 2048, when he would be 59 years old. The case attracted national attention when it was featured in a documentary series that highlighted concerns about the interrogation methods used. Legal experts, psychologists, and civil liberties advocates pointed to the case as an example of how vulnerable individuals can be led to falsely confess, particularly when interrogators use coercive techniques. Dassey's attorneys filed numerous appeals arguing that the confession had been coerced and should not have been admissible. In 2016, a federal magistrate judge overturned the conviction, finding that Dassey's confession had indeed been coerced. However, this decision was appealed by the state, and in 2017, the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals reversed the lower court's decision in a 4-3 vote, upholding the original conviction. The Supreme Court declined to hear the case in 2018, leaving the conviction in place. Prosecutors maintained their position that innocent people do not confess in such detail, arguing that while the interrogation methods might have been problematic, the confession contained information only someone involved could know. However, dissenting judges characterized the case as a profound miscarriage of justice, noting Dassey's vulnerabilities and the lack of any physical evidence supporting the confession. A clemency petition was denied in 2019, and as of late 2025, no further legal developments have occurred. Dassey remains incarcerated at Oshkosh Correctional Institution in Wisconsin, where he will remain until his parole eligibility date decades from now. The next case would involve someone with disturbing aspirations. Michael Hernandez. In Miami, Florida, 14-year-old Michael Hernandez harbored a fascination that most would find deeply troubling. He kept journals in which he listed individuals he wanted to harm, and he studied serial killers like Ted Bundy with an intensity that went beyond morbid curiosity. To those at Southwood Middle School who knew him casually, Hernandez seemed like a typical teenager. However, beneath this exterior, he was planning something terrible. On February 3, 2004, Hernandez asked his best friend, 14-year-old Jaime Goff, to meet him in a school bathroom. Jaime trusted Hernandez completely, having no reason to suspect anything was wrong. Once in the bathroom, Hernandez attacked Jaime with a knife he had brought to school. The assault was savage and prolonged. Forensic examination would later determine that Jaime had been stabbed 42 times. After the attack, Hernandez concealed the knife and returned to class as if nothing had occurred. He attended his remaining classes for the day while Jaime's body remained undiscovered in the bathroom. The ability to commit such an act against a friend and then immediately return to a normal routine demonstrated a level of detachment that alarmed investigators and mental health professionals. When Jaime's body was found, the investigation quickly focused on Hernandez. The evidence was substantial, and he was arrested the same day. During questioning, Hernandez revealed his motive. He described a mission to cleanse the planet by removing certain individuals he had identified. He had planned to harm multiple people, and Jaime was intended to be the first. The journals found in his possession supported this claim, showing lists of names and planning notes. The case raised immediate questions about Hernandez's mental state. His defense team pursued an insanity defense, arguing that someone with such disturbed thinking could not be held fully responsible under the law. Mental health experts examined Hernandez extensively, and his fascination with serial killers and his grandiose beliefs about his mission were documented. However, in 2008, a jury rejected the insanity defense and convicted Hernandez of first-degree charges. During the trial, Jaime's family provided wrenching testimony about their loss. The judge addressed Hernandez directly, noting that Jaime had trusted him and had died alone and frightened. Jaime's father, Jorge, spoke of his anguish, asking how Hernandez could have done such a thing and why. The pain in the courtroom was palpable as family members tried to understand how a friendship could end in such betrayal. Hernandez was sentenced to life in prison plus 30 additional years. Changes in juvenile sentencing law prompted a resentencing hearing in 2016. But the life sentence was reaffirmed. His mother maintained that he was a mentally ill individual who should have been treated as such rather than as a competent adult, expressing frustration with how the system handled his case. In 2021, Hernandez died in prison at the age of 31. An autopsy revealed that he had suffered from a heart condition. His death ended a case that had raised profound questions about how the legal system handles juveniles with serious mental health issues and violent tendencies. For Jaime's family, the death provided no real closure, as the questions about why their son had been taken from them could never be fully answered. In Ohio, another school attack would be marked by a shocking display during sentencing. T.J. Lane. In Chardon, Ohio, 17-year-old Thomas Lane, known as TJ, came from what was described as a broken home. He had experienced family instability and faced teasing from peers, which contributed to a guarded and withdrawn demeanor. Lane attended an alternative school but had connections to students at Chardon High School. He had prior arrests related to aggressive behavior and had reportedly taken up weightlifting specifically to prepare himself for confrontations. On February 27, 2012, Lane entered the cafeteria at Chardon High School armed with a .22 caliber handgun and 10 rounds of ammunition. Without warning or apparent provocation, he opened fire on students who were gathered for breakfast before classes. The attack resulted in 3 fatalities: 16-year-old Daniel Palmer Torr, 17-year-old Russell King Jr., and 16-year-old Demetrius Hewlin. 3 additional students sustained injuries but survived. The motive behind Lane's actions has never been definitively established. Some reports suggested a rivalry or personal conflict with King, while Lane himself made claims that the attack was random. The lack of a clear motive made the incident all the more disturbing to the community, trying to make sense of what had occurred. Video surveillance from the school captured the attack, providing clear evidence of Lane's actions. Lane fled the scene but was arrested a short distance away by responding officers. During the investigation, authorities examined Lane's background and attempted to understand what had led to the attack. The broken home environment, the history of being teased, and the prior aggressive incidents painted a picture of a troubled young person. But these factors did not provide a satisfying explanation for the planned attack. Rather than proceeding to trial, Lane accepted a plea agreement in 2013. He pleaded guilty to 3 counts related to the taking of life and other charges. This meant the case would proceed directly to sentencing without a trial examining the details and motive. What occurred during the sentencing hearing shocked even those familiar with the case. Lane appeared in court wearing a t-shirt with the word "killer" written on it. As victims' families prepared to provide impact statements, Lane made obscene gestures to them. Then, in a statement that drew gasps from the courtroom, he said horrible things to the families and made disturbing references to his actions. His profanity-laced statement included offensive remarks directed at everyone present. The prosecutor characterized Lane's behavior as that of someone who was thoroughly reprehensible. Lane was sentenced to 3 life terms without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would remain imprisoned for the rest of his life. His courtroom behavior had eliminated any sympathy that might have existed for his difficult background. In September 2014, Lane escaped from prison, along with 2 other individuals. The escape prompted a manhunt, and Lane was recaptured several hours later. The escape attempt resulted in additional security measures for his confinement. Civil lawsuits filed by victims' families against the school district were settled in 2014. Lane remains incarcerated at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility. He has shown no remorse for his actions, and his behavior during sentencing remains one of the most disturbing courtroom displays in recent memory. For the families of Daniel, Russell, and Demetrius, and for the Chardon community, the wounds remain deep years after the attack. The final case would become one of the most well-known incidents of its kind. Nicholas Cruz. Nicholas Cruz was born on September 24, 1998, and was adopted as an infant. From an early age, Cruz displayed behavioral issues that manifested in preschool and continued throughout his childhood. He was diagnosed with multiple conditions, including ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder, and depression. His behavioral problems included making threats, displaying cruelty toward creatures, and engaging in self-harm. Despite these warning signs, interventions proved insufficient to alter his trajectory. Cruz attended Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, but was expelled due to disciplinary issues. He had been a member of the JROTC program and had shown interest in weapons and tactics. His social media presence revealed concerning content, including references to hate ideologies and fascination with previous mass attacks. Multiple people had reported concerns about Cruz to various authorities, but these reports did not result in action that prevented what would occur. Cruz's adoptive mother passed away in November 2017, leaving him without parental supervision. In the months that followed, he stayed with various acquaintances. His mental state deteriorated further, and his online activity became increasingly concerning. He made searches related to carrying out an attack and expressed his intentions in various forums. On February 14, 2018, Cruz returned to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, armed with an AR-15 style rifle. He entered the school building and began firing systematically in hallways and classrooms. The attack lasted several minutes and resulted in 17 fatalities and 17 additional individuals sustaining injuries. The victims included both students and staff members who had been going about their normal school day. Forensic examination of the rifle revealed that Cruz had etched markings onto the magazines, including certain symbols associated with hate groups. The planning and preparation that had gone into the attack became clear as investigators examined his activities in the days and weeks beforehand. Cruz had methodically prepared for maximum harm. After the attack, Cruz fled the scene by blending in with evacuating students. However, he was apprehended a short distance from the school within an hour. During his arrest, he initially asked officers to end his life, but he was taken into custody without further incident. Once in custody, Cruz confessed to the attack and provided details about his planning and motivations. The case proceeded through the legal system, with Cruz facing the possibility of capital punishment. In October 2021, Cruz pleaded guilty to all charges, eliminating the need for a guilt phase trial. The case then moved to a penalty phase where a jury would determine whether he should receive a sentence of death or life imprisonment. The penalty phase in 2022 became intensely emotional as the families of the 17 victims provided impact statements. Defense attorneys presented evidence about Cruz's background, including potential fetal exposure to substances, his mental health conditions, and his traumatic experiences. They argued these factors should weigh against imposing capital punishment. Prosecutors countered that the calculated nature of the attack and the number of victims warranted the ultimate penalty. The jury could not reach a unanimous decision required for a death sentence. On November 2, 2022, Cruz was sentenced to 34 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole, one for each person harmed or taken. The lack of unanimity frustrated many victims' families, who felt that anything less than capital punishment was insufficient. During the sentencing hearing, victims' families expressed their anguish. One relative questioned how much worse a situation would need to be to warrant the most severe penalty. Another family member expressed hope that Cruz would be miserable for the rest of his life. A survivor stated that while she carried anger, she would never take it out on others because she was stronger than Cruz. In 2024, Cruz agreed to donate his brain for research after his eventual death, with researchers hoping to study whether there are neurological markers associated with his conditions and actions. Cruz remains incarcerated in Florida, where he will spend the remainder of his life. This was all from our side today. Thanks for watching. Click here to check out another video.